Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, presented by Cattle, Season 5 finale-ish, but not really. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
We have not one, but two guests on this Action Past episode 2. First, our very special guest coming to us live all the way from Dallas, Texas, Daniel Vaughn, the author of The Prophets of Smoked Meat, A Journey Through Texas Barbecue, the co-author of Whole Hog Barbecue, The Gospel of Carolina Barbecue, and the barbecue editor at Texas Monthly. He's traveled the world sampling smoked meats at over 1,800 barbecue joints, many of which are in Texas. Daniel oversees and publishes Texas Monthly magazine's Top 50 Barbecue Joints in Texas, just published every 4 years. It's the Michelin Guide, if you want to understand craft barbecue and the craft barbecue scene, that is now actually recognized by Michelin as of last year, some of the finest eaten in the world. We talked about the Tradecraft Report, barbecue trends, and the weight of responsibility of it all. Next, Ransom Hawley, CEO at Cattle, our wonderful presenting sponsor. He joins us with some perspectives on back to school already. If you're thinking, oh my God, why are we talking back to school? Geez. Well, because, the grocers listening and other folks can kind of think about, adjusting whatever plans they can adjust at this point from a media perspective. And he tells us what parents are thinking about what's going into that lunchbox or knapsack or destined to be left on the school bus. So anyway.
Exactly. It's about time we had Ransom on.
It is, and it's overdue. And you'll hear he talks like we did with Cattle last season. We did a bunch of shorter, quick kind of pulse surveys, but now he and us have kind of moved to doing larger, more toothsome work, if you can say toothsome is work. So we're going to get to that after. Now, reminder to the people, we're not going anywhere, actually, after this podcast. Lots of content for your dog walks and commutes this summer. Tons of great content on your way.
Barbecues. Yeah,
all those great things. We've got interviews that nobody's heard yet from the Ontario Craft Winery Conference, and, of course, lots of them from the Seattle Food Innovation Show. And then we'll be back together, you and I, live in late August to kick off season 6. It's just blown by, right?
Exactly.
It's been pretty quick, right? It's been just a pile of fun.
Season 6.
Now, speaking of summer and speaking of Texas, looks like reading X, looks like you're going to have an update about where you're going to be hanging your hat this fall. And let's just say it's not a 10-gallon cowboy hat.
No.
What's going on? What's going on?
Well, I mean, we've had a discussion as a family and looking at the year ahead. Since I accepted the role at AM, which was actually months ago, I kind of waited a while before making it public. My daughter decided to go to Montreal to McGill in May. My father is not doing great health-wise. He's around Montreal. And felt it was maybe not the right time to actually lead the country. And so it was honestly, it was heartbreaking because it was really, it was a dream job, really, at a dream place. And so I was, I was sad. But family comes first. I mean, that's the most important thing in life, and health and family. And that's, we're prioritizing that. So I'm sticking around. But of course, the initial plan before Texas A&M came along last fall was to join McGill for a while. So that's what I'm doing.
When I think of ag, I don't typically think of Montreal, but we have had a professor from McGill on our radio show, quite well-respected voice in supply management. Tell us a little bit about McGill's ag school.
And that was Pascal Thériault. He's director of a program there at McGill at the McDonald campus, which is in St. Anne de Bellevue, which is about 30 kilometers west of main campus. And that's where I'll be. My office is actually going to be there. And I'll be working, I guess, with two groups. The economics group, which Pascal is part of. And also, I'm a good friend to a few people, a few food scientists. So I'm editor of Trends in Food Science and Technology, and one of them is actually based out of McGill. So I'll be joining him as well. So it's going to be part food science, part economics. So lots of fun ahead. And frankly, I love that campus. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's a beautiful campus right next to the river. And lots of mosquitoes. It's great.
Yeah, I went to McGill for a year.
I know, you're an alum.
Main campus, not quite an alum. I didn't graduate. I skipped off and went to Toronto to do an MBA. But
you did the Maroney thing at Dal, right?
I a little bit. I went there for a great year, but I never been to the campus that you're describing. A little bit closer to Ottawa. So listen. The way things worked out, I hope it will work out best for you and. I'm happy to have you in the same time zone now. So it'd be
exactly, absolutely,
make my life slightly easier.
So I'll be probably at the cottage and of course on campus in between. So yeah, it'll be fun.
All right. Well, very good. Well, we'll pick that up, that conversation up in the fall. Now let's get into the news. Let's start with DoorDash. So Competition Bureau actually published a few things this week, but they are very giving a sideways glance to DoorDash. And as I understand it, they are saying, they being the government, that they being the DoorDash,
watchdog.
Yeah, DoorDash says it's one price, but by the time they add in other things that they make look like are out of their hands, but are actually fees, that the final price doesn't reflect, and that's both confusing and technically could even be illegal. What is this? What you make of this, and what do you think of the DoorDash thing?
The Bureau is actually suing DoorDash, which is very American. And the last time it happened in Canada in the agri-food sector was with chocolate companies. Do you remember that? With Hershey, I think Cadbury was involved. And since then, we've seen a few fines being paid. So very interesting. And my guess, DoorDash will end up probably paying a fine of some sort. But if you look at DoorDash's stock price today, it went up. In fact, it's actually at a record level right now at, I believe, $218. So I don't think that the market or shareholders are overly concerned. But I think they were rumors for many years. A lot of people thought, well, are they falsely presenting promotions? And they're accused of that. They're accusing of misleading consumers in terms of the promotions that they're offering, basically. And so I think it's a good thing for the Bureau to show strength and authority. And I think that's what we need in Canada. So good on them, and we'll see. But I don't see right now how the market is being impacted. My guess is that other apps are paying close attention to the case and see whether or not there's going to be some implications for them too.
You know, if you would have asked me 10, 15 years ago if same-day rush delivery would be a thing for retailers at a premium price, I would have said no. I would have thought that, yes, everyone wants it right away, but no one's willing to pay for it. And it's kind of sawed off somewhere in the middle. I mean, there's this economics rational thinking that, well, I won't own a car, I won't pay parking, I won't pay insurance, and I will spend $9 to have something delivered to me right now. So there's that. Yeah,
being your burrito limousine
burrito
or
your Tylenol, your dog food. Like these folks have cut lots of deals with lots of retailers. Like you can get your bike from Indigo. Like it's not just food. And the retailers I talk to say, it's actually quite popular. Now, part of that is DoorDash and their counterparts kind of underwrite it as marketing. Their intention, of course, is to get everybody kind of hooked on same day 1 hour delivery, and then
that's right.
Then bring the hammer down, I suppose, at some point. Kind of like Uber did for many, many years, right? An Uber ride was heavily subsidized, but now it's equal to or even greater than an average cab ride. So I guess the thing we should watch is this a habit that they are inculcating in consumers, that their expectations and where they operate. Hey, I can get the
cost of convenience.
Yeah, well, in some ways, not like we just did we bought some pet food and it was delivered in an hour. We didn't need it in an hour, but they were offering free delivery like tomorrow. And we're
with your dog Ziggy, you needed what 300 pounds of food?
That's true.
Who would carry for that? Who would carry that?
We go through a lot of food. Next, I'm going to order up my Anvil.
But when it comes to food delivery, I would say that, I mean, they are the ones who are looking for convenience, but I would say that there's a growing number of people who are starting to depend. I'm thinking of seniors when things aren't great outside, when the weather-wise, people with certain handicaps, for example. I mean, those delivery assistive services are allowing some people who can't physically go to the store get to food. So I would say that there are two different markets to that. But at the end of the day, it's what's the cost of convenience, and frankly, in the middle of it all, you have a watchdog making sure that the cost of convenience remains
fair. Yeah, everybody understands.
Fair.
Yeah, fair and transparent. I mean, listen. Pizza delivery has been around for a long, 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 long time. So it's not like same day in the food business is new.
Exactly.
But, now it's just not just food; it's all that stuff. And it'd be interesting to see the percentage of which, I know in this household, there's a random cast of characters that show up at the doorstep delivering food all the time.
Adult children, yeah, absolutely.
Which
There's
of course,
probably lots of business. That's why the stock price went up today.
Which of course the dog loves, because even if a leaf blows on the driveway, he flips out. So
yeah, I know.
For strangers. Anyway, we'll keep an eye on that. Now, something we've been talking about for years that I brought up 2 years ago, this Ozempic GLP-1 impact.
Oh, goodness, yeah.
When we first talked about it, the conclusion I think you and I reached was, boy, if I was a fast food or a snack, I'd be paying really, really close attention to this. And we're starting to see a little bit of this in McDonald's results. Talk about it.
Absolutely. Lots of business models out there that are based on the fact that a huge marketplace, a huge part of the market is driven by impulse, essentially. And so you're seeing some companies like Nestle developing product lines for GLP-1 users, like Ozempic, for example. Interesting. But now on the food service side, the behemoth of all companies, McDonald's, just announced this week, as they were presenting, I would say, disappointing financial results. They were saying that one of the headwinds they're considering is the fact that there's going to be a growing number of people using GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic, because we're talking about millions and millions of people. And frankly, I've spoken to a few people using a GLP-1 drug. As soon as they see these golden arches, they get sick. So they don't even want to stop.
Really?
So how do you get people?
It's like a learned aversion. Like, I can't imagine having food right now. Is that what they're?
Can you imagine? Like, it's pretty intense. So I think it is going to change how you deal with, and we're talking about 30 million Americans, say, by 2030. And in Canada, it's probably going to be close to probably 2.53 million people. 10%,
easy math, right? Yeah.
Which is a lot of people. But consider this: if, let's say, you're a group of 4 or 5, you went out, you go for drinks, you're having fun, and then after that, you want to go for munchies. One of you is using a GLP-1 drug and do not want to stop at McDonald's, for example, but everyone else does. What are you going to do? I mean, we saw that with plant-based. Food service companies democratized their menu as much as possible because they didn't want to lose the business of 5, 6 people just because one person didn't find something that they would want on the menu. I think it's going to be kind of the same thing with GLP-1 drugs. If you want to democratize the menu, well, you may want to do that because there'll be more people on these drugs. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. It's a great point, and it is the kind of next phase after this phase, I thought, where the food industry goes to battle and tries to develop craveability for GLP-1 users, right? So, they'll do whatever they can to not lose sales, which includes, how do we change some of the foods? Exactly what you're saying. Make it palatable or interesting to someone.
And I don't know how you do that if people are repulsed just by seeing the logo of a company.
That's a tough place to start from. Yeah,
I know. So, but it is going to. I think it's going to be a challenge, and I think we're going to hear more from other chains as well as we go through to 2025 and 2026.
All right, let's talk about one of our favorite things. I don't think we've talked about it on the podcast before. Supply management, first time that we're talking about it. Last episode we talked about the what was Bill C-202, and is it? Is it now 202 and was 282? Whatever it was the bill.
It's 282 resurrected.
Okay, and is now called 202 just for the listeners.
Exactly, it's a new parliament. So parliament number 44. Yeah. They went through 3 readings for 282, went to Senate, and that's when things got interesting. That's when I got involved as a witness and testified. I remember on December 5th of 2024. Actually, I think it was the last time I went to Ottawa, and a bus filled with dairy farmers were waiting for me. It was just unbelievable. I don't know if you saw
whatever. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's all about intimidation, frankly, and they do want this bill to be passed because they are convinced that to face Trump next time, you need to absolutely protect supply management, which is ludicrous because at the end of the day, every nation, when they actually embark into some negotiations, they put on the table sensitive areas, and people do that. We would actually do the same with supply management. But if you actually legislate protecting sectors, it makes Canada less attractive. And what I've said in December to senators was, because you're actually sending out a signal to the entire world, including Canadians, you're basically saying this is a perfect sector with no problems, zero problems. You're not only impacting other farmers that are not part of the SM5, but you're also telling dairy, and I'm looking at you, dairy, not eggs and poultry. That's different. Vertical integration has made these sectors more competitive, but dairy is not vertically integrated. It's basically saying to dairy, everything's fine. You're doing great with the status quo, and we don't have to address any issues within your sector, which is not the case. We've talked about many of the problems, milk dumping, talking about a lot of farms that are closing, the issue of fair pricing, industrial prices that are incredibly high in Canada, which doesn't allow cheesemakers to remain competitive for Canadians, and so on and so forth. The fact that China built a plant in Kingston to make baby formula, not innovating enough. Fairlife with Coca-Cola investing in Peterborough, building a plant for a lactose-free milk product. All of these things have shown us that the current regime is not working.
What's the status of the bill? Is it in front of Senate now? I think it passed Parliament.
It's going to Senate. Yep.
Okay, so the past Parliament, in a minority Parliament, so obviously both sides of the House, or I don't know, 3 plus the Bloc agreed, because the Bloc before was plus.
Oh, it was unanimous.
Right? So everyone agreed.
Unanimous. Not one MP voted against 202. Zero.
It's particularly interesting in the context of lots of talk, and we'll probably hear more of it, but the Premier's meeting, lots of talk of the, tearing down provincial trade barriers, right? So it's interesting context, all trade barriers, but that one. So what do you perceive, for the listeners, once this law passed, what do you think is there any implications we should be thinking about early
I think there's going to be a bit of a battle royale at Senate. Oh, I think there's going to be a huge battle. Okay. And by the way, in this past week, 2 independent senators transferred over to the Conservatives.
And remind me, you may or may not know this, is Senate typically doesn't sit over the summer. So is this a bill that sits on the table to be debated in the fall?
I suspect it will be looked at in the fall.
Right.
And
the good news is it's a quick drive for you now from Montreal to Ottawa to testify, right?
That's right, exactly. Now, here's the thing. So when you look at precedents around the world, you don't have to look a whole lot. There's basically just one other case in the world where a country decided to legislate the protection of one sector, and that's rice in Japan. But you need to understand that Japan imports a lot of food. 80% of all the food consumed in Japan is imported.
Oh, I didn't know.
So there are key sectors they don't want to touch, starting with rice. So you kind of understand that. But Canada, and going back to our conversation a few weeks ago, by 2030, the world is going to be short of milk.
Mm-hmm. I was shocked.
By a lot.
Yeah, I was shocked at that.
5 times our national production.
What an opportunity.
And 3 times our national production by 2030. There are huge opportunities for us in Canada. And so there's an opportunity to grow the dairy sector in Canada, not to shrink it. Right now, supply management is shrinking the sector.
I don't think that's a
sustainable.
message that comes out often enough, that this is an opportunity for growth, that you're an advocate for growth.
I'm an advocate for growth, and I don't see any upside with the current regime at all, zero. And next week, of course, at the Food Banks Convention, because as you know, the SM5 is a huge contributor to food banks, and they'll be in the room. And I'm going to tell them, listen, we want your product. We want more of your product. And the way to do it is to reform supply management.
Well, right now, let's get to our interview with Daniel Vaughn from Texas Monthly. Daniel, welcome to the Food Professor podcast. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. How y'all doing?
We are doing fabulous. Thanks so much for joining us. This is our season finale, so we're ending it with panache.
Okay,
having a chat about something
with a great barbecue, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's something I'm personally passionate about, and Sylvain and I have talked about it a lot. Where are we finding you today, Daniel?
I'm at home in Dallas, Texas.
So I've been reading up a little bit. I know your name from Texas Monthly, and I've been reading up a bit about your background. Let's start at the kind of the beginning. You're not a Texas native, born in Ohio. You found yourself in Dallas. You tried Texas barbecue for the first time. Pick up a story from there for us.
Yeah, born closer to Canada than Texas.
Yeah,
in Worcester, Ohio. There, Great Lake State, and yeah, I didn't. We had barbecue. We had stuff we called barbecue. I would cook ribs on the in the oven and finish them on the propane grill, and we loved them. Right, we didn't know any better, and it wasn't until I moved to Texas in 2001, moved to Dallas, and tried smoked barbecue. And smoked brisket, smoked ribs. These ribs, especially at a place called Peggy Sue Barbecue. It's no longer around, but it was a popular spot in Dallas when I moved here. And there was just something about the texture, right? It was like, these aren't falling off the bone. They've got this like bark on them. I didn't know what bark was,
right?
And yeah. They've got just all kinds of different, like this texture that I was unfamiliar with, and this smoke flavor that just didn't taste like a grill or, more aptly burnt sugar, which is what I was most used to in grilled ribs. So, it was a thoroughly different experience.
I mean, I've had the same epiphany coming down. I've been cooking ribs my whole life came down and had like, this is a completely different thing I'm having here. Now, is this, as Texas, is it because of time on task, so to speak? I mean, they use some unique ingredients, post oak, for example, if we think smoke is a bit of a flavor. But how has it evolved? I mean, there's lots of barbecue across the country. I think in Kansas, for example, and as you said, a little bit in Ohio. What was it in the Texas water that has made it such a focus for the craft barbecue scene?
It's hard to tell, right? I mean, I like to say it's the best, and that's why people want to recreate it all over the place. I think certainly Aaron Franklin at Franklin Barbecue in Austin, through food television and through his cookbooks and YouTube series, and just the fact that it became this ridiculously popular barbecue joint, which I don't think we'd really seen something to that level of fame across the country.
And his personality, right? He's got a certain charisma. I was at Franklin's earlier this year. I mean, the food's amazing, but his charisma and his media just savvy just really elevated it, right? It was a bit of a catalyst, right?
Well, yeah, and the fact that he was looking at barbecue in a little different way, like with a focus on the quality of the meat going into the smoker instead of just finding the cheapest cuts you could find, and then also just the real attention to detail throughout the cook and the requirement that everything be just consistently excellent as it comes out of the smoker to feed that long line of people that eventually developed. And I think because of that, it really elevated the sort of importance or the mystique of brisket, smoked brisket. And I think that is certainly the cut that we see, at just about every new restaurant across the country is that brisket. And I think a lot of that is the people who are opening a barbecue joint and the pit masters really want to test themselves by being able to produce great brisket.
And that magic word you said, consistently, right? Not just every now and then, but a lot consistent. First, last bite, first person.
Yeah, no
line,
duds,
last person
right?
Line, right?
It's like, he's talked about it in the past, but you walk out that door and a Franklin Barbecue is somebody who's running the pits or running the line or running that restaurant, and you see that huge line of people, and you just realize, like, I can't disappoint any of these people. Like, it's got to be great every time, and that's why they've sustained that line. I mean, there have been barbecue joints that have gotten famous, and I won't call them a flash in the pan, but it's a place that there's different places that just haven't really learned how to handle the fame or maybe cared so much about putting out that consistently great product for years and years and years on end. And those lines do eventually dwindle, right? But at Franklin, they're still there because at the end of the day, you're still going to get great barbecue.
So what brings us together today around this time specifically is the issue of your Texas Monthly's top 50 barbecue joints, one of the most anticipated food features, I think, in the country. Talk about the process of what's that like, the tradecraft behind the scenes? How long does it take? It's issued every 4 years. Do you start like now for the next one? And how do you keep it secret until publication? I mean, it's not like you walk around in a disguise. Like I remember some New York Times food critics.
Yeah, people know who you are.
Right. So talk about the process and give us some insight into that.
My job is full time as being the barbecue editor, and so I am out there searching for barbecue. I was out this past week in Austin. I'll be out again later this week, searching for new barbecue joints and maybe old ones that we missed. So it's through my work alone in that like 3.5 years in between barbecue lists that we produce that list, that big to-do list for all of our tasters. And so as far as how long do we spend on it? Well, it's a full-time job for me. When we're about 6 months out of finalizing the next list, we'll gather a whole team at the Texas Monthly offices. It was 25 people this last go round, plus myself, and they each get a chunk of the state to go explore. And of course, I give them marching orders of places that they must visit, but they're certainly encouraged to go to places outside of that. And they come back to me with scores about 4 months later, and then I've got a couple of months to weed through all of those to revisit spots, either those that have a score that are surprisingly high or surprisingly low, based on my past experience, any place that's new to me, and then, of course, revisit any place that we really think has potential for our top 10 list and maybe our number one spot.
You can tell Michael's passion is due to the fact that he actually has a barbecue show on YouTube called The Last Request, Barbecue's Last Request, and he's very passionate about it for sure. And we've been down to Texas many times, and we've seen your work. It's just really great, but I assume it's quite demanding. I mean, you have to taste a lot of products, and so I'm just curious to know, like as a sommelier, like in wine, for example, somebody would basically taste a wine and spit it out. Like, how do you make sure your palate is sharp when you taste? And what are some of the things that you actually look for? And has that changed over the years?
Okay, well, let's take those one at a time. So as far as like the palate fatigue, yeah, I mean, it certainly exists, and I don't spit anything out unless it's really terrible. Like if it's totally oversmoked. Have you done it before?
Yes. Oh, really?
I mean, if it's really terrible and oversmoked and it's going to taste like an ashtray, and it's going to leave my mouth tasting like that for the rest of the day, then I don't owe that bite of brisket anything as far as having to swallow it. But most of the time it's just taking small bites and taking a few, what I think are like really representative bites of whether a slice of brisket is done well or a rib is cooked well, or if the sausage has the right juiciness or the right snap. When I'm out there looking for those top 10 places and doing those sort of more important visits, and I say more important because I'm eating a much bigger variety of the menu at a lot of those places. So I mean, that's like 3 spots in a day is about what I could do, and really it's not the sort of palate fatigue that I get is more salt related than anything else, and it's just that huge intake of salt, and then there will be a point during the day where you can tell that that's starting to fade, and I can see that nothing is tasting all that salty, and so if that's the case, then it's probably me, not that. If you can see the glistening bark on the brisket and the ribs, and you can't taste any sort of intense flavors, then I'm the problem, not the barbecue.
Right. So I guess for this year's top 50, have you experienced any surprises at all? Anything that really jumped out for your latest list?
There are always surprises out there. There's part of the reason that we send that team out for that first round is to hopefully bring back some surprises and, to revisit some spots that maybe I hit them really early on in their, in that barbecue joint's life, and maybe giving it a year or so, they've improved quite a bit. So getting that feedback from other tasters has been great. And, some of the spots that were surprising were, I'd say Jennings & Co. Barbecue in Montgomery, Texas. It's a food truck, Saturday, Sunday only. Maybe they'll change that because of this list. I don't know, but it's a father-son team, the Jennings, and they're right down the street from Bar A Barbecue. Bar A Barbecue is also on our top 50 list, and Bar A was a really known quantity, right? It was a really great barbecue joint. It was on our list of the best new barbecue joints, and so I figured that would be a good contender for the list. But having a spot right down the road also make that barbecue list in a really tiny town like Montgomery, Texas was a big surprise for sure. And, there were some other big surprises in the ones that were elevated to the top 10. Lavaca Barbecue in Port Lavaca is a place that I'd been to several times in the past and had really good meals there. They were in our previous top 50, but I didn't think of them as, amongst the best in the state, as far as the top 10. And our taster went out to that area, and that was their favorite in the whole area. I went back out, and they had really just elevated everything about the barbecue joint. All the sides, all the meats, pretty much the same menu. It's just that every item was just that much better. So that was a surprise. GW's Barbecue down in the Valley is our number 5 barbecue spot, and that's down in the Rio Grande Valley in San Juan, right near McAllen, Texas. And it was, again, a spot that I'd been to in the past and really enjoyed, but then going down and realizing that it's just it's just incredible from beginning to end, whether it's the brisket or the perfect ribs, their house-made sausage, or the perfect burger and fry combo that they have called the Margot, named after the movie The Menu. It's the burger that's served at the very end to the main character Margot, and they've tried to recreate that in the restaurant. And oh man, nothing exploded when I ate it like in the movie, but at least nothing outside exploded. I think my head might have, because it was such an incredible burger.
Fantastic. And number 1 this year is Burnt Bean. We have a new Pope. That's in Seguin, which is even farther out than kind of little Lockhart. A lot of regionality going on in Texas. It's such a huge state, but the flavors are fairly diverse, right?
Yeah, and really, Ernest Cervantes is the chef there. David Kirkland, his co-owner, really does most of running the pits. And, Ernest is from Uvalde, Texas, further out west towards Del Rio, out west of San Antonio. So he brings a lot of the flavors from his home. So they serve barbacoa, and that's, which is a smoked and shredded beef cheek. But he calls it tatema. He calls it barbacoa on the menu because people understand it as that. Right, but if you ask him what he's serving you, it's tatema, which is just what his father called it, and his family and the people he grew up with in Uvalde called that sort of smoked and then braised or really confit in its own fat sort of beef cheek in the way that it's served. Lots of different taco options there, lots of different barbecue sandwiches as well. One of the most delicious things on his menu isn't really barbecue at all. It's a bean and cheese taco. Like it's so simple, and it's just so perfect. The brisket huevos rancheros is like a Sunday special, and that is like 2 crispy corn tortillas topped with sliced brisket and fried eggs, and it's just a masterpiece in textures and flavors. Wow. And then the regular barbecue menu that's got to be great to certainly be in contention for any of this. And the brisket's just perfect. The sausage, the pork ribs that he squirts on some sweet sauce right there at the end before they're served. It's It's really incredible.
Fantastic. And he's number one. Now, a follow-up question to something Sylvain said. I got a barbecue show. Lots of people got barbecue shows on YouTube. I was I've been following Goldie since they made number one, and I visited there. And, famously, Johnny White has said, listen, don't ask me. I don't like when people ask me, is there a secret? There's no secret. I work really hard at this. This proliferation of barbecue on YouTube and other channels, is that good for the industry, good promo, or is it a bit of a washout? Or what's your perspective on that?
I think there's some bad things that come from it. I think overall it's a very good thing. The bad things that come from it, I think, are just the sort of sameness of barbecue across the country of people who are copying those videos. But I try to think more in the long term, and the fact that, when you go out to different parts of the country, right? Like whether you're in like Denver or Minnesota or Toronto or wherever it might be, and you're having barbecue at a relatively new barbecue joint, you're having the first iteration of that barbecue and the first sort of translation of the culture. And as the barbecue culture in that region starts to grow, and as that restaurant grows and matures and brings on some local flavor, then it'll start to taste like its own thing, right? But if you're catching that just in its very early stages, then it's going to taste like what was, what they're copying or what they're going after, what their goal is and their target. So, I think in the short term, it can be a little negative just to taste a lot of the same stuff all over the place. Like when I did a search all over the country last year and the year before, to come up with my list of the United States of Texas barbecue, the best Texas style barbecue outside of Texas, in the lower 48. I found like the same smoked burger that Leroy and Lewis serves. Right. I found it at so many different restaurants. Right. And, I was like, can y'all do your own take on it a little bit? Like, it Moo's Craft Barbecue out in Los Angeles. That was the first place that I'd tried a pretty much straight up copy of that burger. And then when I went back for a follow-up visit, they had this like chili cheeseburger using that smoked burger and the brisket chili that they had made. And I was just like, that's it right there. Like that's the stuff.
Let's talk a little bit about the human side of barbecuing. I'm sure you've visited many family businesses. Can you share a particular memorable story from a pit master or a family-run joint that stuck with you during your travels?
I certainly have some, and let me preface it with, so much of my job in between the list is telling people stories through a write-up of their barbecue joint, right? So I'm interviewing these people. I want to know about their families, about their motivations, and all of that led up to them opening a barbecue joint. When I'm searching for the list, I know a lot of these people for sure. But the thing is, like, I try as much as I can to filter that out throughout that process. And so, I try to make it a little less personal, throughout the search. But it's hard, because you visit places like Rehino Barbecue in Olton, Texas, and see their big new restaurant that they've opened, which is beautiful, and a little market in this tiny town of Olton, which is up in the Panhandle, and visiting with Aaron Rehino over a platter of barbecue and talking to him about barbecue, but knowing that at that point, imminent death of his wife from cancer was right around the corner, and barbecue just didn't seem nearly as important as sitting there talking with him about the changes that he knew was about to come to his family. In Vargas Barbecue in Edinburgh, Texas, it's not listed on our top 50 or in our honorable mentions list, unfortunately, because it was closed at the time that we were out there searching. And I mean, I had the unfortunate knowledge that it was because Ram Vargas was going through a kidney transplant, and that's why they had to close the business down. Huh. But regardless, that it wasn't there. It wasn't open for us to go visit, and so that one definitely hurt. But they're back open now. Nydia and Ram are back open in Edinburgh.
But they have to wait 4 years. I guess.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
They've got to wait 4 years for the...
Are you tempted to actually issue like an interim report in between?
Well, we do an interim that is the 25 best new barbecue joint list.
Right.
And that's so that a place that maybe opened up this year doesn't have to wait 4 years to get some sort of recognition like that from us. So any place that we missed in this search, or really any place that opened 2025 or later, will be considered for that list, and we'll release that in the summer of 2027.
Right. You spoke earlier about copycats, or I guess joints that actually copy others, which leads me to think about innovation. What does innovation look like into the Texas barbecue scene? Like, what do you look for? Technique, fusion, ingredients, taste, how it's served.
Yeah, all of that, right? Like, go to a place like Koi Barbecue, which operates a pop-up in Houston. Again, not on our list, but Vietnamese barbecue. And, you taste their curry sauce with rice with big fat slices of juicy beef rib on top. It's amazing. They make these beef ribs, these beef back ribs that they start on the smoker, and there's a fish sauce glaze that goes on them, and they're finished over direct heat. And so, I mean, it's barbecue. It's just got sauce flavor to it. I think anytime you start seeing new proteins being added or at least experimented with. I mean, for me, one of the great things about going around searching for this list, seeing this resurgence of lamb, which, for Texas barbecue's history, lamb, goat were just as important as beef. And
wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, back in the meat market days when, there was a lot of wool and mohair business in Texas, and therefore lots of sheep and goats being raised, you were going to find that stuff at the meat markets right alongside the beef, and you were going to find that on the barbecue menus, right around 1900. If you look at the turn of the century, just about all the advertisements for these meat markets serving barbecue are going to have, lamb and beef.
And it took an Egyptian to bring it back, right? KG barbecues really good.
Right. So you've got the Egyptian KG barbecues, got the lamb chops and lamb belly ribs and lamb ribs, like pulled lamb. He's got it all. Interstellar Barbecue in Austin also does some pulled lamb, a pulled lamb shoulder taco, which is just amazing. Smoke and Ash Barbecue does a lamb sausage, and several halal barbecue joints are using lamb casings instead of a pork casing to make an all halal sausage. So, seeing that use of lamb coming back in is a great thing, I think.
Before I throw it back to Michael to send us home, I do have one question about you and your role in the Texas economy. You've been called often the most powerful man in the Texas barbecue scene. Do you agree with that?
I guess if you're talking about a single individual, yeah. I mean, I understand that the list that we produce is
influential. Yeah,
has a lot of power to bring customers to a place. It was interesting over the weekend. Todd David, former owner of Cadillac Barbecue in Dallas, who's been in the top 10 and is still in the top 50, he put out a call to action to a lot of pitmasters out there and said, the Texas monthly list is important. It's going to drive a lot of business to the places on that list, but you need to create your own list. And that is a list of your customers and your regulars and how you can better serve them, because you can be on a list, but if you can't get your local community to love you and love your barbecue joint and come and support you, that is what's going to keep you afloat. It's not whether point. There have been too many times where the disappointment from barbecue joint owners or pitmasters of not being on the list is when they share with you or you come to realize that part of their business plan was making this list. Right. And it's like that can't be. You can't run a business like that. Yeah. You have got to run a business that's going to make money, whether they're on the list or not on the list. Like, if you can't,
it's interesting because that's one of the criticisms of the Michelin lists, right? The Michelin guides is that sometimes the restaurants work to the guide versus work to the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? And then if you're working towards 3 stars, then anything lower than 3 stars is a disappointment, which it's like, how could you be disappointed at 2 Michelin stars?
It was great, by the way, as a side note, that Michelin is acknowledging craft barbecue in Texas, right? This year. Fantastic for, like you mentioned, Interstellar, right? And Bib Gourmand for my friend Chuck at Barb's BQ, right? So it's great to see.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, the four Michelin stars in Texas barbecue out of 15 restaurants in Texas that received a Michelin star. 4 being barbecue with Corkscrew Barbecue in Spring and La Barbecue, which is in our top 50, and then Leroy and Lewis and Interstellar Barbecue in Austin, both in our top 10. So I think there were some people out there who thought that maybe we'd be following the Michelin list and seeing who got a Michelin star and sort of following their lead. But I think when their list comes out at the end of this year, it'll be interesting if maybe they look at the top of our list and maybe reconsider Burnt Bean.
Exactly. Now, last couple of questions for you. 4
Is
years.
It about garlic finger?
No, it's not. It is about what do you think you'll find, and fast forward time travel to another 4 years ahead in the barbecue scene. You've just published your next list. I'm sure you're exhausted from publishing this one, but it's a way of saying what's the future in the short term for what you see happening in the scene.
I mean, I think something that we really saw on that best new barbecue joint list back in 2023 was just this sort of wellspring of barbecue joint owners who are bringing their individual flavors, their heritage from maybe different immigrant cuisines around the world into Texas barbecue, and I think we're continuing to see that grow. And I mean, I think a lot of it is just smart business practice too. Like we are so flooded with barbecue joints in Texas that if you can't differentiate yourself in some way, then you're really just going to sort of fall into the background. Right. And so I think that's one thing that,
actually, I had a question about the top 50. Why 50 and not, I don't know, maybe you're tempted to go to 100 because of all the nice joints you have in Texas. Were you ever tempted to actually compromise on the 50?
Because it's the top 50. Like it's just
the top 50. That's the brand. It's a brand.
And in 1997, it started off as the top 50, and every list since then has been the top 50.
I suspect you have double the amount of barbecue joints now, or triple. It's even more competitive, right?
Yes, it's certainly more competitive, but you might also notice that there's a top 50 list, and then there are 50 honorable mentions after it as well. So
that's true.
It's you might call it a sneaky way to have a top 100.
I'm bad at math, though. I didn't figure that out.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing on a tray barbecue?
Pork steak. If somebody's offering pork steak, which for those unfamiliar, you can take a pork shoulder or a Boston butt, and you can smoke it and shred it and serve it as pulled pork, or you can serve something interesting. Slice it into thick slices and cook that. Either smoke it, cook it over direct heat, and that way you get more smoke, you get more bark, more seasoning, and then slice that against the grain in that pork steak and serve that. And that, I think, is a much better use of a pork butt, a much more delicious use of pork butt. And so anytime I see that on a menu, I'm going to order it.
Well, Daniel, listen, thank you so much for joining us today on the Food Professor podcast. We're big fans of barbecue, but hopefully one day we'll be able to meet and visit some of those great barbecue joints in Texas.
Yes. Well, good luck out there on the barbecue trail.
All right. Take care.
All right, we're back. Speaking of all that, as Daniel was talking, I was thinking of ribs and barbecue, and boy, it was a little hard to concentrate every now and then. I've been to a bunch of those places, and it's such a great
1,800 barbecue places,
300 evaluated.
Would you get sick of barbecues?
You would seriously think, but we talked about that, of course, in the podcast. How you not get numb, right? Like how your flavor can stay sharp. Yeah. And one of the things I was thinking of,
I can see you do that though.
In the conversation Daniel was talking about, we touched on it, the cost of brisket, and he made some interesting allusions to the fact that there was, a skill in taking a pretty good, very good piece of brisket, and there's another skill in taking an average piece of brisket and making it fantastic. It feels like brisket and beef is going to be, I hear it all the time from my friends in Texas. They're shocked at how much it costs. Like when you go for a tray of barbecue, it's a lot of money. And it used to be that way. It was the food for everybody, right? It was a night out.
Exactly.
What's your forecast for the price of beef in the U.S.? Because we're just talking about Texas barbecue, but also here, I think there's a different trajectory, right? But it's still up, correct?
Yeah, for meat it's 5 to 7. Like we don't forecast specific products, but we were. I mean, if you go back 6 months ago, we released Canada's food price report, and we did say that beef was going to be an issue in 2025. So we were expecting higher prices, but not that much. I mean, this is insane. And so if you look at strip loin cuts, for example, they're up 35% since January. If you look at sirloin cuts, they're up 33% since January.
Huge.
Even ground beef is up 22% year to year. But over in the U.S., yes, prices have gone up. And keep in mind, both industries, the Canadian and the American ones, they work in lockstep. I mean, typically when you see increases in Canada, you kind of see the same thing in the U.S. That's what happened in 2014 when a drought impacted feed costs, herd sizes went down, then they were built up again. And we saw the same phenomenon on both sides of the border. But this time around, prices are skyrocketing in Canada. Their increases are twice, maybe 3 times more than what you see in the U.S. right now, which begs the question, what is going on? What is actually going on in Canada? And so part of the increases we can't explain, but a lot of it we just can't explain at all.
Is it your guess that it's at the farmers are benefiting or someone else in the distribution channel?
Well, farmers are benefiting, but they're price takers, so they take the price that the market is telling them to take. So they don't control any of the pricing. But I would say that meat packing is a bit of an issue right now. It's a black box. I mean, it's controlled in Canada by 2 companies, Cargill and GBS, and both companies are privately owned companies. We don't have
that's
access
similar in the States too, though, right? Like if we're comparing apples to apples.
That's right.
Right.
But former President Biden went after meat packing because he felt something was up. And since he did that in 2022, we've seen several companies writing checks, settling out of court because they went after meat packers. Just this February, GBS wrote an $83.5 million check to the White House to settle out of court. So there's that pressure going on in the U.S. And I'm just wondering whether or not it's making a difference. And to be honest, I do wonder if that's the case at all. I mean, a lot of people are going to the grocery store right now and they're seeing Australian beef half price of what it is for Canadian beef. I mean, Australia's halfway around the world.
It's a long way away.
Okay, wouldn't you ask the question? Like, wouldn't you ask yourself what's going on here?
Yeah, interesting. All right, well, we'll keep an eye on that one over the summer. Now, of course, when you're talking barbecue, I think ribs mostly. And let's talk about the Canadian. What is the Canadian turnaround success story?
Comeback kids.
They've been on the podcast before. Ole Mel. We've had their CEO on, and he's had to do plant closures and some real turnaround. But it looks like it's paying off.
Absolutely. So they've closed a few plants in the last little while. So in 2022, they post losses of almost $500 million. That's a lot of money. And now the latest fiscal year, they reported a profit of almost $200 million.
Wow, what a turnaround. What a
turnaround.
$700 million turnaround. Yeah,
absolutely. And so this week, they actually announced that they were closing 2 more plants, smaller plants, one in Anjou and one in Cap-de-Madeleine. And they're actually, I think they're just building this mega plant in Trois-Rivières, which is in the middle of the province. Brilliant. But the plant that they're actually going to build is right next to La Fernandière. And if you don't know what La Fernandière is, that used to be Yannick Gervais' company. Yeah. So before it became, La Fernandière was acquired by Ole Mel, and that's how it became an executive onto the Olimel board. And when Réjean Nadeau passed on, very tragically, all of a sudden, Yannick took over. So basically, he's honoring his roots by building this mega plant in the middle of the province. And I think it's the right move. He's replicating Maple Leaf's food strategy, really. So Maple Leaf, you remember when Adrian was actually on our podcast, they built 2 mega plants, one in Hamilton for pork and one in London for poultry. That's exactly what Olimel is doing, and that's the right thing to do.
Well, congratulations to everyone at Olimel. That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
And a little shout out to me for actually pronouncing it half decently correct, which I'm typically not very good at. I should actually practice. All right. Well, let's take another quick break. Let's hear from Ransom. We're going to talk about back to school. What's going on? What's going in lunch boxes for moms and dads, for the kids? What's getting left behind on the shelf and on the school bus? Probably. Let's listen in now. Ransom, welcome to the Food Professor Podcast. Your inaugural debut on our show, the last of the season. Thanks so much for making time to fit us in. How are you?
Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's been too long. Let me tell you that. You finally allowed me to get on this podcast.
Well, you lead a very, very busy life. You and I crossed paths at a conference, and we were just zipping, like we literally crossed paths like we're crossing a highway. So it's great to get you on the mic and just our opportunity to thank you for your support for the Food Professor Podcast. It's been invaluable in terms of getting our reach out to consumers. And you know, in the past seasons, we did a lot more pulse updates with your help. And we decided kind of collectively and what you're doing with your business to focus a little more on bigger issues. So less research, but more impactful. So thought it would be a great time to get you on and talk about some of the work you've been doing as we head off in the summer, but as retailers and grocers and restaurants and people start thinking about the fall and back to school. Sorry, I'm saying that in June, but anyway, you know, there you go. So Sylvain, over to you. Let's talk to him a little bit.
So I guess I mean for our audience out there, maybe you want to explain a little bit more about what Cattle is all about, what you've been doing the last year or so.
Cattle is a mobile-first data and insights platform. We have a large first-party Canadian panel. We are Canadian only, and we're actually celebrating our 10-year anniversary in October, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long haul, man. That's a long haul in your business.
I've aged about 20 years.
Research time.
Yeah.
That's right. And so we reward Canadians, consumers, for sharing their data and engaging with brands. So we get about 10,000 receipts uploaded a day. We get tens of thousands.
Every day, yeah?
Every single day. So it allows us to get some pretty cool insights on the Canadian consumer in near real time. And we've really been focusing on that, to answer your question, Sylvain, is expanding our data collection and trying to understand more and more about what consumers are doing, buying, and thinking.
So I guess at a very high level, when it comes to food economics and what Canadians are thinking, what are some of the key findings that you've come up with in recent months? What are you seeing out there with Canadians and grocery shopping in general?
Yeah, there's a few things we're seeing, and we also recently, I know it's hard to talk back to school, but we recently ran a back to school study. To Michael's point, kind of fewer, bigger, better bets. And really provide in-depth data and research and share it with our clients and share it with the market. But in terms of, no surprises, the kind of made in Canada theme absolutely spiked and has calmed down, but we're still seeing it as an important factor for Canadians. They're looking for made in Canada, how that's defined, whether it's regional, provincial, or national, and whether it's prepared or made. Some portion of that, there are variances, but we do know and we see across many categories, but because we've been working with a ton of brands to understand how this impacts their categories, that a Canadian focus is sticking around and looks like it's not going anywhere. Certainly not to what it was, but looks like it's not going anywhere for the foreseeable future.
Why do you think that things are calming down when it comes to buy Canadian in general? Is it just because of pure politics, or is there something else out there?
I think it's probably maybe oversimplifying, but attention span, right? I mean, there was a lot of excitement and a lot of enthusiasm around, fighting the big bad US. And so I think there was certain sentiment and desired actions to purchase Canadian. Now, what we do see is there's always a say versus do. And, while buying Canadian is still an important factor in that consumer decision tree for Canadians, they still are, working through tightened wallets and need to do more with less of a budget. Inflation's still creeping up. So we think it's kind of come back to reality, and it's still important for Canadians. It's just it needs to be convenient, and also the price needs to be right for Canadians to convert.
Ransom,
Right.
I got a question for you. So we talk about in the context of buy Canadian, but we've also been talking about the not buying American goods, which is, by the number, right, Sylvain, higher. Like what do we report from Nick? Like 8% of Canadians saying that, or people saying that. So my question for you, Ransom, is you do so much research. And, let's take a category like wine. In many provinces, there is throttled the amount of U.S. wine available for many, many months. So I feel like any disruption like that breaks existing habits, and people have the opportunity to go just discover other stuff. And, let's wave a magic wand and suddenly U.S. products are back on the shelf across the country. They're back, I think, in Alberta and Saskatchewan. But overall, have people, would you think people have changed habits enough to make a material difference to their shopping? I know I found some amazing bespoke Canadian bourbons that I wouldn't have tried, and I'm not going back because they're just really good.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a certain level of stickiness. I think to the same point that, I may make, because there's an emotionally charged point in time and, it's us versus them. I may make a couple of purchases and stray from maybe my tried and true, which might be made in Canada or maybe just not in the US. But really, if the quality, flavor, value isn't there, the consumer isn't going to stick. Now, there will be certainly a certain level of consumer that really stays. But I don't think it's going to be achieved unless that value equation is right. And of course, the quality is there. But that discoverability, it really forced a number of Canadians to try new things, which is pretty incredible for Canadian brands.
So I guess for the back to school season, when do you expect to see some of these promotions come out? When I was a kid, I remember it was probably mid-August or something like that. And now it became early August, and now we're seeing back to school sales like end of July. So are you expecting earlier, later, about the same time? What do you think?
Yeah, I think and probably a lot of people listening to this podcast is, back to school back in the day used to be later, right? And we'd see promotions later on. And also, living in this space, a lot of us are thinking about, okay, what are we doing for back to school like 6 months ago, right? The trick is marrying that up with what consumers are thinking in that time frame. And to answer your question, from the research that we conducted, which was just last month, we surveyed a representative sample of Canadians, about a 1,200 person sample across the country. And those are primary grocery shoppers with kids going into either kindergarten to grade 12. And most of those parents across that 1,200 sample start planning in late spring or early summer. That's about 2/3, about 67%.
Wow. Planning for the next school's year.
That's right. So right about now.
Oh
now,
my God.
It does skew. So when you look younger.
I feel bad. I feel like a bad parent.
But a good professor.
Because Sylvain, you mentioned you have a daughter going to McGill. And now what we see is that the younger the child, there are nuances. The younger the child, the earlier the parents start planning. So I think, you get used to it. And,
right.
And you maybe get into a pretty good
And
rhythm.
I'll ask my daughter to bring the apple to her class, of course, for the professor.
What should our retailers be thinking about from your observations from what people are saying? Obviously, the through line to this is value, but are they looking for innovation in the lunchbox? And How are they thinking about snack time? And did you get into any of that kind of insights? Healthier snacks, plant-based? We've often talked about making healthier choices for our kids and getting them started off right. But I also see that the Selena Gomez Oreos are racing off the shelf too. So there's always that too. What are your thoughts?
Yes. I mean, those Oreos, I don't know if they do, but they taste better to me. I don't know if you guys have tried them yet, but
I haven't tried them.
Yeah. So we actually ran 2 separate back to school studies. We ran one that's retail focused, and that one is just out now. And I've got some kind of high level insights to share. And then in the next week or so, the brand focused back to school report is coming out. And we thought about combining them, but it was kind of a half measure. And we wanted to make sure that they were both very impactful and were applicable to either brands or retailers. So in this specific study, kind of high level, what we found is that not surprisingly, the back to school journey is not linear. It's also emotional. There's multiple trips, and it is value driven. I don't think that's going to surprise anyone. Now, when parents start shopping, kind of that age discrepancy that we talked about earlier, parents begin planning early, but they do face ongoing complexity, price sensitivity, shifting priorities by grade. And that goes hand in hand with things like brand preference and timing. But the consumer has very high expectations for both online tools and the in-store support that's required. And retailers that take those items and factors into account and support that journey end to end. We're talking strong promotions, helpful planning tools, ensuring that the stock is there and the variety is there, as well as because a significant portion of that shop happens online. Research, not necessarily purchasing, because the majority of the actual purchases are still happening in store, but product reviews. So that online journey, making sure the reviews are there, that will help the retailers stand out and compete in this. I mean, it is an emotionally charged retail moment for these consumers that I looks like it seems to heighten every year.
Really?
Year over year, more important year over year. That's interesting.
I mean, also think about think about parents today with young kids versus parents a couple decades ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of liken it to, pet parents.
Right.
Helicopter. I mean, it's just every element is so important in making sure that is a success and the kids are okay. Right. So it is still critically important to parents that might be a little overinvested. And I say, I put my hand up. I've got an 8-year-old, 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
I've certainly been in that camp, right? And making sure that everything is perfect for them for this big moment.
So what are some of the, if for retailers out there, grocers, what are some of the blind spots that they could actually take advantage of with the back to school season coming up? Are there anything that you think they should be thinking about that no one else is, that in terms of packaging, in terms of promotions, whether it's related to food categories or promotions online? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, really the biggest items that stood out to us are, which I think retailers are already nailing, is that this starts early, and 2/3 of parents are planning early. It starts right now. Private label and value continues to be critically important. That importance.
Parents aren't shying away from private labels; they're attracted to them.
They're attracted.
Is that what you're seeing?
Yes.
Wow.
And so private label is important. That importance wanes.
Because that's like 20 years ago, parents, if they're value driven, care about their kids, they want good nutrition, they may not look at private labels as a good source. But now you're saying, well, things have changed.
It changed, but it wanes as the children age. And so, we didn't dig into why that is. This is a bit of an interesting insight, but perhaps brand is more important because of peer pressure or other things where.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
It's important for that kid to have this, not private label juice box or, a branded Ziploc bag or something. Whereas, you think younger kids, that doesn't even register for them. So what we did see is kind of across the board that private label brand becomes more important the older your child is.
That's a fascinating insight, eh, Sylvain?
That's absolutely.
That's super interesting. Well, listen, this is a great highlight. Is there a way for our listeners? Well, first of all, of course, there's a way to get in touch with you. You're on LinkedIn and learn more about what you do. And of course, they would have heard a little bit on the show that you both attract. You want to talk to consumers, and you also do some work on receipts for retailers. But is there a place where they can go find your latest research? Because as you say, some of it you release to the public and to the business public anyway. Is there a place where they can go find that stuff?
Yeah. And so as part of this kind of shift to bigger, better bets, larger things, we're providing all of our data, the full report. There's no paywall. There's no strings attached. Basically, it's available for anyone if they'd like it. So if they just email insights@cattle.ca, CADDLE, and just say, hey, Food Professor Podcast, I thought you guys were mildly entertaining. I'd love the report. We have a PowerPoint. We have the data. We also have a really nice PDF, and that'll be available starting next week. Happy to share it. And again, no strings attached. It's a way to help us kind of elevate our presence within the market.
Listen, great insight, great information, Ransom. Thank you again for joining us on the Food Professor Podcast. And on behalf of myself and Michael, I'm going to wish you and to your team a great summer season.
Absolutely. You too, guys. And thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks for joining us. I want to wrap up the show, and I want to ask you two questions. One is thinking back to our season 5, which started about September of 2024 up till today. What are your 3 most important stories that when you reflect on the period we've been through, what are the 3 most important stories in the food business?
Oh, wow. I mean, Trump 2.0 is an easy one for sure. Mm-hmm. I would say our talks about tariffs is kind of linked to Trump 2.0, I guess. Mm-hmm. But I would separate all of that with the Buy Canadian movement, which I thought was really interesting to unpack. Mm-hmm. We saw a different market. Canadians behave differently, yes, we know the cause, we know what the trigger was, but it was really interesting to talk about, how Canadianized grocery stores became, at least for a while. And I'd say, I mean, we've talked a lot about different policies, but the one I think that stands out that was quite divisive was our discussion about the carbon tax and carbon policy in general. I think there's some unfinished business there because we have the industrial tax, but I do think that we did a good job pushing that envelope further to get people to understand that carbon pricing is an important issue. I mean, we can't just say we do nothing. I mean, we have to do something. So
and the lack of clarity, I think what resonated most in our discussions was answers that questions that we don't have answers to. Like what is the actual impact of, both the consumer and the commercial or trade wholesale tax?
Exactly. Right? So carbon pricing, carbon capture, carbon credits. I mean, I do think that Canadians deserved a more educated debate about carbon pricing and how all of that impacts food affordability, the food industry from farm gate to plate. So I thought we did a pretty good job. And of course that was supported by some of our studies as well. So,
well, I do look forward to a less dogmatic discussion for sure.
Yes.
I am enjoying the current government's less focus on
honorable mentions, GST holiday for sure. Of course, we talked about all sorts of things going on in Ottawa and different provinces. The Weight Watchers bankruptcy was probably the most shocking thing. It wasn't on my bingo card for sure. What about you?
No, I'd agree with that. I think the overall, this idea of don't buy American / buy Canadian. Again, we're looking from September to today. In my career, which goes back many years back to Hudson's Bay, RIP Hudson's Bay, it was irrelevant. Canadians didn't really care where their product came from. There was always a local movement, particularly in food, at a price, but I had never seen these kind of choices. I mean, it was a COVID era style shock to consumer behavior. So I'm very fascinated. And I mentioned it in.
When you look at NIC numbers, I mean, if there is, we often get the question, what food boycotts have worked? Well, this one did. Because,
which is,
I mean, American food products dropped minus 8.5.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of tonnage.
That is a lot.
A lot of tonnage. So I'm very, very interested to see. And this follows into my next question, is what you're going to be watching for over the summer. I'm very interested to see how this develops, whether this will kind of go to ground and, be a moment in time, or whether this will sustain. Because once people, like, I give you this example, I used to buy Kentucky bourbon, and then I didn't, and I tried some Canadian bourbon. One of our guests recommended it to her on National Post, a writer in National Post, and I tried it, and it's like, it's delicious. Why haven't I been trying this before? Like, it's a big deal. Change back.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we all know that a lot of Canadians will just not go to the U.S. for this summer, and they'll be traveling across the country, which is great. Yeah. But I'm going to try to look for like which region is gaining the most from this staycation, this Canadian staycation sort of phenomena, because we've been talking. Is it going to happen first, and two? Who will benefit the most? So is it Quebec? Is it Ontario? Is it the Maritimes, out west, BC?
Yep.
I can tell you Halifax is going to be really, really busy because it's a nice destination.
So let's end with what you'll be watching over our summer season, and we'll be talking about back in September. What are the things you're looking at watching?
Well, climate is always a big issue, so I'm going to be looking at how wildfires are impacting agriculture in general. I'm going to be looking at yields, how they're being impacted by climate as well. Of course, right now the big talk is strawberry season. And it's being delayed in Eastern Canada as a result of a cooler spring, wetter spring. So those patterns tend to impact consumer behavior at the grocery store. So there's probably going to be a lot of things going on like that. And of course, the ongoing feud with the Americans, and we'll see how things evolve over the summer with potentially launching a trade negotiation, or I don't know what's going to happen with tariffs, but we still have some issues with India, China, and of course the Americans. Will these issues be addressed? The G7, the G7 is actually coming up next week. A lot of things coming out of G7 because both the Prime Minister of India and the President of Mexico both are going to be there, along with the President of China. So Prime Minister Carney intends to, I think, address many of these trade issues, not only with the Americans, but with other trading nations that we have problems with.
I think the G7 will be kind of an interesting milestone. There's a lot that builds up to the G7. It's not just that weekend. The Rubio and all these cast of characters have been here already. I mean, exactly. Our new ambassador from United States, I didn't think he set the best tone. I'll paraphrase, but you and I have been married a fair bit of time, and if our wives had a complaint about something we did and we just said get over it, that probably would not lead to domestic peace.
No.
So I'm not sure that the U.S. ambassador telling us to get over the 51st state comments is the the
way he phrased it is that the media in Canada made it an issue, and I think he's partially right. I mean, it was amplified immensely by the media in Canada, immensely.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how it all settles out. Maybe we'll get Wayne Gretzky on the podcast for the fall.
Exactly.
Anyway, all right. Well, that's a wrap on, as I said, season 5-ish, but the wrap on you and I talking about for a couple of months. We take some time off, refresh, and we got lots to talk about and lots of great interviews. It's not like you're going to not hear both our voices over the summer with our great interviews with lots of great brands, lots of great people. So until we talk again, we're, of course, still here. You can reach me on LinkedIn, you on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever you're on. But until we speak again, I'm Michael LeBlanc, Media Baron.
And I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Safe travels, everybody.
Safe travels. Happy summer. Take care.